Hey, Next Economy Now listeners. Before we begin, we wanted to let you know that our fall cohort of the Next Economy MBA begins on September 29th. If you're an entrepreneur seeking to create a business that works for all life, a member of a team looking to transition your organization into one that is more regenerative and democratic, or someone who's considering a career or livelihood transition in alignment with your values, we designed this course for you. Over this 9-month learning journey, you'll have the chance to learn practical skills around business and life design based on our work with over 500 social enterprises. In addition to live sessions, you can deepen your experience and practice with special sessions, affinity groups, and connections with over 800 alumni who have participated in the course. Interested in learning more? Visit lifteconomy.com/MBA to view our course curriculum and sign up for a free intro with one of our facilitators. If you're ready to sign up, you can use the code PODCASTMBA to save 10% on tuition. We hope you'll join us.
Welcome to Next Economy Now. The goal of this podcast series is to highlight the leaders who are taking a regenerative, bioregional, equitable, democratic, racially just, and whole systems approach to creating the new economy.
Hello, my name is Erin Axelrod, a worker, owner, and partner at Lift Economy. And my guest today is Marian Moore. Marian has been in the work of questioning the meaning of money for 36 years. She is a coach, facilitator, convener, producer, writer, and co-creator of many initiatives for communal learning and transformation, including Play Big, Lead with Land, the Trust Web, Jubilee Gift, Jubilee Justices, Our Ancestral Journey, and the Just Economy Institute. In 2025, she co-edited with Mike Gast and Alex Tom the anthology Free the People to Free the Money to Free the People, in which are published 2 of her essays. She is also very active in facilitating Indigenous land reunion. She lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which has been home for 45 years. Marian, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, because I know you personally and your friendship with Winona LaDuke and all the amazing troublemaking you get up to in Minneapolis, I wanted to open up and just ask you to share with our listeners a day in the life of Marian.
Well, here I am in Minneapolis. So if I'm not on the road, which it's interesting because most of my work doesn't take place with people in my home. I mean, most of it, a lot of it does. But anyway, so I have a lot of Zoom calls and I thought I would tell you yesterday and today. So, because yesterday, every Monday, I get together with 3 other women and do a writing group for an hour and a half. And that's been the last couple of years. And that really helped me understand what is my story to tell and helped me in the work of this book. And later in the day, yesterday, I had my weekly call with my awesome co-editors of Free the People to Free the Money to Free the People to debrief what we just did, book talks in New York City and Philly. And I'll just say, Erin, the surprise of it, these book talks, they fill the house, 150, 175 people, cross-class, cross-race. We do these readings that are quite personal, sort of memoir from the book, Mike and Alex and I. And then we have this amazing political conversation about what does it take to organize the rich and build a cross-class movement for justice. And then the next day, which was yesterday, I start with a couple of calls with the Trust Web, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But that is an ongoing, now probably 10 years, experiment of a collaboration, cross-class, cross-race, intergenerational wealth redistribution project that I'd love to tell you the details of that. And then in the afternoon, a call with my beloved collaborator and sort of co-steward of a nonprofit called Jubilee Gift Galaxy. And the focus of that work is to protect the sacred and reimagine money. So we're gearing up for a meeting of our council. So we were developing the agenda. And Erin, on that call, I was like, how many agendas have I created in my life? It seems like my primary work is to make agendas. And then this brings us later in the day back to Minneapolis and Jubilee Gift Galaxy. I was very involved in the singing resistance this winter in the Minneapolis resistance, that extraordinary time. I say that and I have chills because it was so extraordinary in all the ways. And I went to Sarah Abbott, whom I know. She used to work at Resource Generation and Sunrise. She's been an organizer, and she and one other woman were sort of launched this national singing resistance. And I was like, okay, how is this going to continue? This must happen. What you may not know about me is my early work life was producing music. So for a couple decades, I did that. And so I'm like, music, social change, singing. I sing, I write songs. So I offered to Sarah to support Singing Resistance in being a fiscal sponsor for them and helping them invite financial support. So I was going over to do a little work with her on that. And then she had this community potluck. It's so beautiful. All these things have sort of, in order to, I think, kind of perpetuate that extraordinary sense of community we have, I've been noticing a lot of efforts of sustained gatherings. So, just a low key, come if you can, bring your, I brought a wild rice salad. Thank you, Winona, for the wild rice. And so those are a couple days.
Incredible. And I love the thread of those days being, of course, redistribution and figuring out how to, impart these concepts that really no one's safe or free if some people are hoarding wealth and others. And the thread of it's not only just money that is actually the key to our liberation collectively. It's also gifting our time and energy to each other through potlucks and cooking food for each other and singing and like the more than financial realm. So,
right. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, Erin, because a lot of people who know I'm associated with wealthy people and in this world that they would sort of not being in this world think of philanthropy. And so they'll come for advice about raising money and I think they think I'll just say, call this person, this person, this person. And what I find myself saying is, or I don't say it, but the underlying truth is it is about the money. It's not about the money. And it's about who are you and what is the gift you're bringing and whom do you want to invite into it. I think people forget or haven't learned yet, some. And this has really been a thread of my work through all of it, is the inner work that's necessary for all of this outer work of movement building that we're doing. And in particular, for me, our relationship with money.
Yeah. So maybe ground that a little bit more deeply in maybe sharing a little bit about the Trust Web or the book, whichever one feels most alive right now. How are you right now seeing people reckoning with their relationship with money, and how is that changing?
I'll do thank you for that question, just a little bit of a rewind, which is my whole entry into this work began because I was invited into a network of quote unquote social change philanthropists called the Threshold Foundation. And that was in my early 30s. I was an inheritor. I am an inheritor of wealth privilege and class privilege. And I really spent many years, I was doing other work, my music producing work at that time, but learning through this spiritually oriented community that was devoted to who do we have to become in order to be in service of the world with this privilege that we have. And so did a lot of inner work and exercises, this is sort of broadly what we now would call money transformation work. And it was about 10 years ago that a young Resource Generation alum, Elspeth Gilmore, asked me if I would be a coach for her, hold space for her, as she'd been giving away money for years, millions, but she had a $7 million chunk she wanted to give away, and she was tired of doing it alone, tired of being the only one responsible for writing the checks. So she invited some people. 2 women of color said yes, and they invited me to work with them as a facilitator to help them. And they did some giving at first and some experimentation to retreats that I led with them. And then the third one, they were like, we don't want to do it alone either. And they each invited 3 more people. So this group now of 12, whom they invited the 9 and they were 3, and then me as holder of the process, were each given $100,000 as gift and then $200,000 to give into the world to support social justice, but however they would define it. So no strings attached, and also this profound gift of the money for them. And so what was amazing for me and has really changed my life is that I got to bring all that work that I had done through Threshold and then Play Big and Lead with Land, where I was working primarily with wealthy white people. And now I like to say I was the only straight white person in this group, and great diversity of how they grew up. But Elspeth and I were the only owning class people. And I got to do this money transformation work with this group and to learn how much that affected their capacity to do their work in the world. Yes, it was the material wealth that they received, but it was also demystifying money and getting to have the experience of abundance. There's a woman named Monica Simpson who is a national reproductive rights leader. She leads Sister Song based in Atlanta. She grew up financially poor, what she describes as generational poverty. And this experience transformed her. She says that it completely changed how she did her work. And they went from a deficit where she had started in leadership to now being this multi-million-dollar enterprise. And so now she wants to do a trust web with Black women. She says, I'm from the Black church. If you get free, you got to free somebody else. But the emphasis here, and I would say also Alex Tom talks a lot about it, he being one of the co-editors of the book, that he realized, he came in sort of skeptical and, well, of course I'm going to do it because my friend invited me and it sounds interesting, but who is this person that has $7 million she can just say she wants to give away? Like, he had some attitude. And then he heard Elspeth say, well, it's not my money. It's not my money. And he was like, whoa, oh, okay, and then he also went through this process of having to do his own work, his own personal work around money and class. So that experiment continues. We got some funding. They each got another round of $230,000. And then we just kept doing this meeting and learning and telling the story and supporting others who might want to do this kind of, it's really about giving up, that the wealthy person gives up the power and really gets to be in community. And as someone who's worked with wealthy people a lot in a coaching role, seeing the isolation, even when they give, the separation and the isolation, I kind of jokingly, not jokingly say that this is my ministry, wealthy people, because I know what that kind of isolation and separation and people projecting onto you and sort of like, okay, rich people, just get under the bus, throwing the rich people under the bus. We want your money. We don't want you. And that's a part of what these book conversations have been about too, that we need all of us.
There's a real impoverishment that wealthy people have that you're describing, right?
Yeah. I don't know if you've talked about this much, Erin, but if you can pay for someone to come help you with your garden, or when you're sick, take care of you, and pay someone, you're not relying on community. So that's just one feature of that kind of isolation.
Yeah, there's an incredible quote in the book What is gained by giving money without impediment, where nothing has to be proven? Well, I don't know how many of our listeners are familiar with the magnitude of mechanisms, I call them financial gymnastics, that philanthropy expresses to validate and justify the frameworks for giving away money, as opposed to this trust-based framework that you've been experimenting with, which is give the money to the people that need it in relationship.
Yeah, and trust them.
Trust them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been, the trust web I focus on a lot because it is turning it upside down, both who has to prove themselves or not just the people who received who were in the trust web, but then to whom they gave money. There was no need for the then recipients another circle out to prove themselves. And then the other upside down is that Elspeth was part of the group. Because there are a lot of experiments, beautiful experiments that have gone on over decades that the book covers of, foundations like Liberty Hill and Haymarket and Headwaters here in Minneapolis, where there's a affected community council that does the decision making and the wealthy people give the money. And that's great. But where are the wealthy people then in community?
Yes. A question I've really been grappling with is also, where is the role for knowledge transfer to wealthy people of how to live in a way where their personal security is not tied to their wealth?
Yeah.
Could you speak a little on that?
Well, I'll never forget once when Elspeth actually said, I would give it all away if I knew you would catch me when I fall. So that's a whole process of being in relationship deeply enough, intimately enough to be able to believe that, right? Who's going to catch me when? Because the training, and we can get into, I've been exposed to a lot of that, the safety and what you need to keep in order to be safe and okay and all of that. And then getting to hear, if you're in proximity and closer relationship across class, which our culture does not provide opportunities for very much with the segregation, geographical, et cetera, educational, et cetera, then you don't know the experience of being able to rely on community in that way. So it's an unlearning and a learning.
Yeah. And how many of us, because the built-in mandate for scarcity structurally built into our economic systems, how many of us actually do not have that sense that we can give money away because there's somebody there that's going to catch us?
Yeah.
Cross-class experience, right?
Yeah.
So the work of our time is cross-class relationship of how do we catch each other in the beyond financial sense.
And I think also, and this has been years of relationship building in this group, but being able to, across class and financial difference, like being able to say, and we're getting to that point in TrustWeb of, should I be, so we have a certain amount of money from which we pay ourselves in order to continue the work. And we're all getting the same rate at this point, but also having conversations like, should I get less because of I own my own house and I don't have a mortgage anymore. But I'm older, so I have some insecurity about what happens later. And just to have those kinds of questions with people that you're not going to be embarrassed to say how much your house is worth versus knowing that they're renting a house and, that kind of thing. Because I know they love me and they believe in me and they appreciate my values, so we're in relationship. And so it's not going to be it feels safer to be able to share more intimately.
And you've practiced that intimacy muscle over many years as well. One of the things we talk about at Lift Economy, we practice self-set salaries, which is a distinct but similar process of sharing our needs and allocating resources in our organizational budget according to those needs as opposed to market rate valuation of our services. And it makes me think, what if more of our organizations had those built-in mechanisms to build that musculature that has atrophied?
Right. Yeah, well, good for you. I'd love to hear more about that at some point.
Well, I want to hear about the book tour and the book, how it's being received and how people are receiving this mandate to organize the rich.
Well, I've been part of 4, one in Oakland, one in Minneapolis, one in New York, and one in Philly. And then there was another one in Seattle. And I'm kind of gobsmacked, actually, by how lively the audience becomes. And, oh, you're making me think new thoughts. And I mean, when I reflect on it, Erin, I realize, okay, I've been doing this work talking about money and class for decades, but not in a public space. So yes, people get invited and that's how they know about it. And they're connected in some way to the work. Maybe they know one of us or they're part of some organization that sponsored us, the event. But it's just so beautiful. There's people my age, the boomers, and there are people, all the way teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And there is just this hunger, I feel like, to be able to talk about class and money in public. Also, the book talks, and this I think is reflective for me of what I believe is required for changing the world in the positive direction. We start with each of us, the co-editors, reads a little section, basically a very personal memoir piece. And so that is kind of disarming because we start with the personal and reveal. And so people go, oh, okay, that's what we're doing. But then we end up talking more politically, more about social change. And no one thinks that we have to have the big answer, but I think they come out believing that they can have these conversations and that it's important to, and also that rich people are people too, which it's kind of a joke, not joke. I went out with someone once and when I was talking about the work and I was like, rich people are people too. And he was like, no, they're not. I mean, and it's easy when you have the trillionaire, there is an inhumanity to the crazy world that we're living in and the greed. That's insane. And for people, I think they're reassured that there are actually wealthy people, that there's actually a movement that's been growing over decades with wealthy people that actually want to transform and are honest about the challenges of it. It takes a long time. And some of my donor organizing friends and I, it takes a village to help support the transformation of a wealthy person because the wealth defense industry, as you know, has such a powerful hold on people when they come through the pipeline and learn about their inheritance.
I love that you use that term. Could you describe for our listeners who might not be familiar with what are the types of jobs, maybe we call them bullshit jobs, David Graeber, of the wealth defense industry? Just maybe give a sense.
Well, here I was working with a client who wanted to do more mission-oriented investing. And so I found a few people that seemed to be, and this was back 20 years ago, so there was no Cordata Capital yet, where people are actually trying to do wealth redistribution as part of their investment. But anyway, there was actually at one of the presentations, one of the slides of this wealth advisor was shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. And for those who may not know what that means is your grandfather did manual labor shirt sleeves, but then he made it big. And now if you're not careful, you'll have to go back to work with shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves. And I kind of feel like, yay, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. So Yeah, there's just an assumption that you need to protect the wealth. And they are literally trained to not, figure out all the ways not to pay taxes, figure out all the ways to not redistribute, to put fear. And these are good people, many, they've just been trained, as we all have.
Yeah. Yeah. The tax professionals, the philanthropic advisory firms. Yeah. This theme keeps coming back in our conversation of the humanity of people steeped in a system that is designed so the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. What do we do with that?
So maybe we can bring up now my beloved teacher named Orland Bishop. You may be familiar with his work. He's a true mystic, and he studied money and the esoteric origins of money for a couple of decades. And one of a very simple thing, but profound thing he says is money is the most significant unconscious agreement in our culture. And so I think that also you do so much work in trying to reveal what the systems are that are trying to keep that sense of that unconscious agreement in place. And I feel like the work that I'm in partnership with others to do is to bring people into greater consciousness about what all those systems are, and that this is not the truth. This is an agreement, and we need to make different agreements. So that's a little way in, maybe. And also, Erin, in thinking about talking with you and knowing the work that Lift Economy does, I was noticing the trajectory of my work. So threshold and sort of getting training and just getting conscious myself and developing a relationship between my spiritual life and my money and learning about issues, etc. And then Play Big, which was one of my threshold buddies invited me to work with her. And they were one of the early sort of, she called it, this is Carol Newell and Joel Solomon, who were working with Carol's Wealth to support a sustainable economy in British Columbia. And she called it Whole Portfolio Activation to Mission. So then I was all about all the different creative ways to use money and using different people's stories. So we did that for many, many years, 14 years. And then Lead with Land, which was a land version of People of Means with land and a land-based mission. And then I started to notice how hard it was to, even though we had this great, inspiring, but how people really need, it's sort of like if you go really upstream, it's in the consciousness. And so the work that I've done since then has changed in two major ways. One is more explicitly to be about the consciousness, like Jubilee Gift, Transform Money and Protect the Sacred, our ancestral journey with Jubilee Justice. How do we become in relationship with each other through this recognition of ancestors, but also shifting from just working with wealthy white people to this huge array of groups that I've somehow, it's funny, if you really set your intention and a prayer, like all these things just sort of came that I got to be part of. So I can't remember what your question was.
You nailed it. The question is, how do we hold the humanness of people in a system that is designed for the rich to get richer and the poor to get poorer?
Yeah, and I think it's really recognizing, and that's all of our work, that it is the system. And also I think it's really important, and it's just been so beautiful working with the Trust Web, and in particular because we've been doing these public events with Alex Tom, because he's a very well-respected movement leader, because he's a very generous mentor to many, many people. And so when he says, I had to transform myself and my relationship with money, that is very meaningful, and then meaningful to me because it is very affirming of what I've devoted myself to, and often would worry, oh, is this just relevant for wealthy white people? Turns out, no.
Yeah, there's some quotes in the book around like from folks not from the owning class reckoning with my liberation is tied with the liberation of the 1%. I can't remember exactly who it was that said that. Wish I could. Maybe it was Tracy.
Tracy, absolutely. Yeah, Tracy Peterson, who's part of the Trust Web. Yeah. She said, even though I like to think they're demon spawn.
Yeah. What do you consider under-investigated areas of inquiry as we seek to create this next economy?
Well, I think we have covered a lot of that, and it is about that personal relationship to money, and that each of us has a role to play in that. It's not just, rich people are bad, or from a superficial rich person's point of view, poor people don't know how to work with money. Like all of us have to examine our relationship and then ideally be in conversation with others.
Could you give some examples that are inspiring to you personally of where money has gone, like initiatives it has supported from a more holistic lens or paradigm when it's done in that trust-based way?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is through work with Jubilee Gift. I had actually originally Lead with Land. I had gotten to know Marcus Briggs Cloud and Tana Little of the Muskogee Eco Village, Egan Felicia. And this is interesting because it combines what we were doing with Jubilee Justice Ancestral Journey and Jubilee Gift, because Elizabeth Keller was part of both of those. And she is part of a family who owns a legacy plantation in Louisiana. And she was part of Jubilee Gift. And so Jubilee Justice is based at her family's land, Conda Mason, and she developed a relationship. And here's one thing I want to just say. Now that I'm 70 and I've been working in this for so long, to see where the seeds get planted and then how they grow, and to really know that you don't know what's going to happen. So Elizabeth Keller came to Lead with Land because I found her through Dirt Capital, blah, blah, blah. And anyway, and then all these relationships and all these things bloom in 7 years. Unbelievable. But anyway, so yeah, well, why don't we start with Jubilee Justice? So Conda and Elizabeth get in relationship, and the Conda does some convening at the Inglewood Plantation, Inglewood Farm. And then she realizes that she has work to do. The Lotus Foods, she was in relationship with Lotus Foods. They say, we need to source system of rice intensification, which is the only kind of system for rice that they will use. But, because of the tariffs, we're having a hard time there. It's only in Asia. And anyway, so Conda says, what about Black farmers? And they go, great. And then Conda ends up at Inglewood Farm and starting this network of Black farmers in the Delta South to transition to this system of rice intensification, which is great for the climate and great for water and better economically for them. Anyway, and then moves to Louisiana. Elizabeth's family builds a house for them to stay in. Anyway, and then through the ancestral journey, Elizabeth learns about her own ancestors in the South and how they would be extractive of land and move on, the farmers back in the 1900s. So she develops this understanding and also had a family investment in a lumber company that was proximate to the land that this Muskogee Eco Village has. Anyway, very long story and probably not mine to tell in its entirety, but she ends up partnering with Egan Felicia and getting family members and then to help them buy more thousands of acres of land. None of that would have happened, not just because the relationships, but because that process of recognizing and learning about history and the repair that is called for many of us whose ancestors, and our class privilege and wealth privilege comes from their extractive that hurt other people, whose ancestors can become our friends and our fellow travelers.
So powerful because, so many ways. One of the things we talk about in our MBA that often gets just grazed over is that our economy is rooted in exploitation of these two huge, quote unquote, I hate to call it like asset, but that's how the economy was built: stolen land and stolen labor. And what you're saying, these pathways of healing that in the little tiny possible ways that we can start to chip away at that legacy of trauma. It's so powerful. And thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah. And, it's easy, Erin, to feel like, oh, well, that's just this little amount. And these are stories that then can be contagious. That's what I have to believe, because actually I've seen it evolve. And is it going as fast as we need it to? Is it scalable? As people always say, but I just need to go with what I am viscerally experiencing as miracles.
Well, and the more people see wealthy people as human, the more we can touch into areas of ourselves. We can see ourselves in their story, even if we don't have, necessarily ancestors that were plantation owners. But what are ways that we're all kind of steeped in the complicity of an economic system that is rooted in so much exploitation?
Yeah, if you have a few minutes, I was doing outreach for this gathering that was going to happen for Jubilee Justice. And my mandate was to find people who were descended of plantation owners or still had plantations. And I'm thinking to myself, oh God, thank God my ancestors, they did bad things, but at least they didn't own plantations. That very month, March 2019, my sister forwards me a front page New York Times article about a woman named Tamara Lanier who was suing Harvard University because they owned daguerreotypes, ancient photographs of her enslaved ancestors. The reason they have them is because a man named Louis Agassiz had commissioned them to prove, quote unquote, that African people are in it from a different zone of creation, and so they are inferior. And Louis Agassiz is my great-great-great-grandfather. So, there you go. So I was able to, because I was in this work, Erin, I got onto Facebook, found this woman, messaged her, and then worked with my son, my nephew, my sister. We organized family members. My nephew said, why don't we write a public letter to Harvard as Agassiz descendants to support Tammy Lanier? It's a very long story, but the short of it is that Tammy did respond. 6 weeks later, we had the letter. We ended up doing a press conference together at Harvard. We've been in cahoots ever since, and now the daguerreotypes are now in Columbia, South Carolina at the African American Museum. But it was just that's why I'm talking about these miracles. Like, what are the chances that in March I'm looking for people descended of enslavers and then I find out about this horrendous ancestor? Very humbling. And also then other people are inspired that they can walk toward. And I was inspired to walk toward Tammy Lanier instead of hiding my head in shame, because I had seen 10 years before a documentary called Traces of the Trade, which was done by Katrina Brown, who was descended of some slave trade shipping. So I was inspired because I had seen her do that. So that's what we get to do for each other.
Yeah. How do we lean towards truth and healing as opposed to, the white supremacy trait of shame, which just perpetuates the harm instead of healing it? Wow.
And to have extraordinary, gracious traveling companions like Tammy Lanier. She just couldn't have been more welcoming, loving, and appreciative.
Thank you for the work you're doing, Marian. It's deeply inspiring. As we come to a close, I would ask you, is there anything that our listeners could do to support you and this work?
That's lovely. Well, I guess because the book is out there, Erin, check it out. And Michael Gast, who initiated the book called Free the People to Free the Money to Free the People. And maybe your listeners understand what that means after this conversation. Quick story. I was at a Threshold meeting, beautiful man named Paul Heibel, who's always kind of grumpy at Threshold meetings. I say, why do you even come? You're so grumpy. He said, I come here to liberate the money. And I was like, oh, yeah. And then I said, well, I come to liberate the people to liberate the money, just as a little rejoinder. But it's about the consciousness, right? We have to free the people to free the money to free. So, and Mike Gass, it's an Organize the Rich anthology. And so you can check out Mike's website as well. That will point you to the book. And yeah, and just don't be scared. Don't be scared to talk about money. Try it. And yeah, I think the book can sort of help bring some language, like to people who haven't found a political home or a network. It also can give you information about more resources.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And don't be scared. And also treat your failures as learnings, right? So if we fall on our face talking about money, that's a part of it too. Yeah. Plenty of those too. We're rebuilding atrophied muscles.
And thank you and Lift Economy for the work that you continue to do. Way to sustain.
Yeah. Well, any further closing thoughts for our listeners as we come to a close?
It's a hard time to be alive in this country and in this world. And I guess we got to keep showing up for each other and finding our way to a lifting like you are trying to do, the good stories that can give us hope and enable us to believe that it's worth living and that we can find our way. Gotta believe.
And music and song, it just came to me like your origin story and how music and song can keep that hope alive. So yeah, well, can't wait to keep in touch. And thank you again for the time today. This was a really heartwarming conversation.
Thank you, Erin.
Hey, Next Economy Now listeners. If you enjoyed this conversation and are looking to dive even deeper into the B Corp movement, you'll love our new podcast, Beyond the B, hosted by Lift Economy's Amy Allison and me, Ryan Honeyman. Beyond the B is your insider's guide to the B Corp movement. You'll learn about the new B Corp standards shaping our community, how the B Corp movement is navigating the various tensions and challenges of growth, and how businesses like Patagonia are putting their commitments to people and planet in practice. Check out our latest episodes and free resources at lifteconomy.com/beyond. You can also subscribe to Beyond the B on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again for listening.
Hey, Next Economy Now listeners. If you haven't gathered from our podcast already, we're really passionate about helping to build a future that works for all of us. If you share that passion and are looking to deepen your practice, we want to share a few ways to connect and learn directly with the Lift Economy team. You've likely heard of the Next Economy MBA, which we started almost 10 years ago and have trained over 800 alumni through the fundamentals of business design from a regenerative and just perspective. New this year, our Next Economy Fund will embody our values of democratically allocating resources to Next Economy entrepreneurs that are part of our alumni network. We've also launched 2 trainings that came directly out of our MBA community's desire for more in-depth skill building around 2 key topics: organizational leadership and personal life design. Next Economy Leadership is a workshop series designed to help culture leaders at purpose-driven organizations move towards full embodiment of their values. And Next Economy Living is a 6-month training designed to help everyday citizens and consumers take actionable next steps to transform their local communities to align with a future that works for all of us. You can hear about all of these offerings and other ways we're supporting the Next Economy movement at lifteconomy.com/next steps. We deeply appreciate you being a listener of our show, especially in a cultural moment when attention and community are hard to come by. We're amazed by the community of folks we get to learn alongside through these offerings and hope you'll consider joining us.